And we are live. Good morning and afternoon. Hello, everyone joining us. We'll give everybody a second to jump in before we start. I see the numbers creeping up still right now. Hope everybody's staying warm. Hello. Leila, Tammy, you guys staying warm? You got balmy weather there, or is snow like us in St. Louis?
I'm in Atlanta. We have rain. I mean, it's chilly for us, but no snow to be found, fortunately.
I have lots of snow and lots of very cold wind up here in New Hampshire, so can't wait for spring.
Sitting out of St. Louis, we've got way more snowfall this year. I'm feeling like it's time to invest in a snow blower, but we'll see what ends up happening. We will give everybody until 3 or 4 after before we start. Just while we have a couple more trickle in. Hello, everyone. I'm getting excited for the spring gardening, which is hard to believe with the snow sitting on the ground. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. That's how it has to be. You have to think warm thoughts, or otherwise it'll never come, is what it feels like. Hello, everyone trickling in and joining us. All right, folks, I say let's jump on into it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to be talking 2025 compliance shakeup. I am your host today. My name is Claudia. I'm the inside sales and account manager over at Visory, a relatively new face around here, but we've got a fabulous lineup. I'm going to pass it over to Tammy, our beautiful director of cybersecurity. Tammy, if you want to take it away, introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Claudia. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Services at Visory. I've been here going on 11 years, so always learning something new every day. So happy to be able to give you some information and answer any questions that we might have today. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Tammy. And we have the fabulous Leila as well.
Hey, everyone. Excited to be here.
Fabulous. So, guys, I will start off with what we're going to review today. We have a chock full presentation that I'm super excited to be a part of. Starting with what's changing in 2025, looking into that current cybersecurity threat landscape, a little bit of background on what to expect, why managed IT and cybersecurity matter for our RIA friends, as well as navigating that compliance challenge that comes alongside being an RIA. We're going to talk about preparing for the SEC regulations that are coming out and practical actions, a legitimate to-do list for that 2025 compliance. So let's jump into what's changing.
Lots changing in 2025. So there's definitely some things, especially if you're an SEC registered firm, you have to be on the lookout for. one of which is the new AML rule, which is already in effect. You just have to make sure your AML program is operationalized by January 1st, 2026. So this is not a rule pending, this is a rule approved. So if you haven't already worked with your internal compliance team or your outside consultant to start discussing how to develop your AML program, that's definitely something that you want to make sure you're spending some time on. So that's super important. So we also have just some enhanced cybersecurity regulations, updates for you guys that are RIAs, lots to consider. What I want you guys to think about as we're going through the presentation today is that don't forget and don't be afraid to admit this is a safe space. I'm sure a lot of you don't have a lot of the minimum requirements in place. I'm sure a lot of you don't have outsourced providers or an IT company or someone that's doing things like testing the vulnerability of your systems. So let's just accept that that's happening, and that's where many of us are coming to, and that's where we are coming into this webinar today. But I hope what you'll do after, talking with myself and Tammy and Claudia is that you'll really take some information home with you and to your firms that you guys can start implementing. So that's just high level. Back over to you, Claudia.
I'm going to tag in Tammy here on our current cybersecurity threat landscape and what we're looking at, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia. As I'm looking at these common threats, the 3 bullets we have here, these have been the big guys for a long time. And really the reason is they're still working, right? Phishing. The bad actors are still using that. They're using social engineering. They're using very targeted attacks against folks because they work, right? They're able to get through the defenses and get people to click things and let them into the environment. So I see these particular threats as, continuing to be used and not necessarily go away anytime soon. AI is going to make all of these threats faster, more targeted, more accurate, and more believable for your employees and even for your clients for that matter. But AI is also going to be helping to improve detection and the remediation efforts, right? It's going to be able to alert security teams much quicker with some remediation steps and maybe even take action, right? We're using AI in a lot of different ways now. And so some of this stuff can actually be mitigated very quickly as soon as some of those patterns are starting to come out. Ransomware is a good one. I have a story a little bit later that, some of these ransomware things can be detected and stopped in their tracks if they're following sort of these common vectors that are now in AI and built into the modeling that lots of products are using these days. So there is hope. And then, of course, the impact to you, I mean, it's very wide ranging depending, what the threat is and how it gets in, right? It can exploit data. It can obviously cause some damage to your firm's reputation and client trust, right? And a lot of these things are going to be reportable events going forward under the new rules. And, they're going to be things that are going to be much more publicly acknowledged so that when clients are shopping for, an advisor to help them, they have a lot of this information to help them make an informed decision. So no fear, we can help you get through these things and just make sure that they're on your radar to put some guardrails around and just to be aware of.
Thanks so much, Tammy. I'm curious, jumping in for a moment, are you seeing any particular size of firm or any particular geographical region that these common threats are going after more often?
Not necessarily. A lot of it is just opportunistic, right? A lot of the stuff they just send out and it's kind of spray and pray. And then, there are some targeted things where they can use, this publicly available, we call it OSINT information, right? Publicly available information. about you as a person, about, what firm you work for, who all of these things. They can use that information to sort of build I'm going to use the word dossier, but that's not really the right word. It's too CIA, but they can build information. They can even use AI to build a very targeted campaign if they want to. Sometimes what we see is once they get into a firm and they compromise, let's say they compromise an account, we may work, or your IT firm may work to get that shut down. What we do see is that they continue to sort of make advances on that same company because they've put a lot of effort into learning information, and they may have seen some information at that company that they still want to go after. So, especially in larger firms, you kind of have to be aware, right? If you had an incident or you had an account breached, just sort of be extra aware, because they may continue to try for a short amount of time to regain a foothold because they've put a lot of time and effort into that. So they want to capitalize on everything they've already learned.
Oh, fascinating, scary. Thank you so much for sharing that. Going into that same vein, I mean, why does this matter? Why is that managed IT and that cybersecurity really make a difference other than just not being breached?
Yeah, well, as if that's not enough, right? But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that, financial systems, all of these things about your business, but you may not be the expert when it comes to, applying IT and your network and all of that stuff, right? So you really want to partner with someone who does this day in and day out and really knows the ins and outs of putting proper layers in place to assist you, right? So there's some operational efficiency, some oversight that you can gain by partnering with a managed IT provider. Certainly things like proactive monitoring, maintenance of your network, help desk support, right? If your folks are going to need to put in tickets or they can't print or they can't log in, having someone that they can work with keeps your business moving forward and they don't get stuck on these little mundane things. Having patches and updates automated and taken care of in a timely manner really reduces that sort of cybersecurity vulnerability footprint. You want to keep all of that as updated as much as possible. Things like you're securing your data and your compliance, right? There's all of these regulatory requirements constantly changing over time, right? So you want to really work with someone who's going to be able to keep up, keep putting in the new things, right? Because it's not stagnant, it's always changing. Things like encryption, if you're sharing data. Audits, right? Doing a regular audit and monitoring for your compliance. Things like cybersecurity training, awareness training, right? Again, all of this changes, so you want to keep constantly, exposing either your clients, but especially your employees to whether the latest threats, what's on the horizon that they need to be aware of, right? So they can recognize these things. Maybe it's time to put in, a VPN or MFA to be able to really protect some of that data that you're sharing. Again, going back to the employee awareness training, that human error is a big one, because you can put your hardware in, you can put your systems in, and they're going to follow the policies that they're designed to protect against. But humans can make a choice. They can override, they can click things. So, that's really a big one. And then, as your business grows and, you're going to acquire other businesses and you want that scalability, right? So you want a partner that, can get you, maybe into cloud solutions or, some more cost-effective scaling as you grow, right? You want that to be ready to go as you bring on new clients, new employees, and maybe even new acquisitions. And then I'll just wrap it up with, some business continuity and disaster recovery, right? Having a partner who, knows what redundant systems you need to help keep your business going in a disaster. You're going to want cloud-based backups and things like that. And, really helping you with your DR plans, right? How can we continue to do business, if some factor sort of takes us out? So I think those are kind of some of the big things.
I see as well, under those key considerations, the A word, if you will, being able to be audit ready. I know that's on top of a lot of prospects' minds as they come and speak to Visory or other MSPs. Anything you want to throw or add on to that piece as well?
Yeah, I would say, I was gonna say, practice, like do your own audit and then you'll be ready. Take it away, Leila.
I think from the perspective of like a SEC or state audit, keep in mind, especially from an SEC perspective, cybersecurity has been, continues to be, and is for 2025, one of the top 5 priorities for the regulator. So it is not unusual for examinations, whether it's an initial registrant exam, if you're a new SEC registered firm, or you've been around for a while and you're just waiting for your next audit, this is going to be a key area of focus. I think one of the things you have to keep in mind is think about all the data you have access to as an advisory firm. You've got social security numbers, you have date of births, you have beneficiary information, you have account numbers and legal addresses, legal names. You may have copies of passports and driver's licenses. You have a lot of very, very sensitive data about individuals, let alone kind of other non-public information that you may have about different companies, research that you've conducted, kind of what your next move is from a portfolio management or a strategic perspective. So you've got a lot of very sensitive data. What are you doing to protect it? What are you doing to reduce the likelihood that someone's going to access this information? And I say reduce likelihood because it's not if, it's when, right? Mm-hmm. If City Atlanta can get hacked, State Bar of Georgia can get hacked, if, different agencies in our federal government get hacked, what makes you think that you're going to be spared, right? You have a big target on your back as a firm in an industry that has so much access to this data. So it's really important, kind of what Tammy was talking about in terms of having a provider that's doing things like setting up your computer network, identifying what devices are connecting to your cloud-based applications or to your, if you still have a server in-house, getting access to your systems, but being very considerate about monitoring them, making sure that they're set up properly with some sort of security. A lot of hacks happen that are very, very unsophisticated, right? It's someone who's been using the same password for the last 15 years, right? It's out there on the dark web. If you've shopped at Target, your credit card information's out, you know what I mean? Like this stuff is out on the dark web. So if you aren't changing passwords, if you aren't monitoring kind of who's accessing your systems, if you're not doing those security patches, you're opening yourself up. And that's the easy stuff. Those are the easy ways that hackers can get in. And a lot of times they're happening in really unsophisticated ways. They send you an email and you click on it and now boom shakalaka, you've got a virus on your computer, right? Or you've got someone who's accessing from their cell phone. The cell phone has no password, no PIN, no pattern, whatever it is you use, your fingerprint to lock that device, and it's just open to anyone to get in. So a lot of these incidents happen through a very unsophisticated method. So when we're talking about IT and cybersecurity, there's the infrastructure part, there's the putting in place the software, the patches, doing the testing, doing, making sure that everyone's got passwords and they're updating them on a routine basis. But then there's the compliance side as well, where you've got to be able to pull the reporting to show that's happening, right? If you can't document it, it didn't happen. It's pretty much how it goes. So when we're talking about being audit ready, you want to make sure you're doing what Tammy's discussed, but you're able to report it as well.
Thank you so much. That rolls perfectly into that next slide, which is why I switched over as well. When you're talking compliance, when you're talking being audit ready, like we were too, what are key areas, or if Leila, you go a little bit further in detail on those regulations that we're seeing?
Yeah, so there's currently regulations in place now where companies that are 8K filers, they're making public information already. If they have been hacked, they actually have to disclose that information through those 8K filings. And what we're finding, and you can actually find this through the SEC's website. So don't go to Reddit, go to the SEC to get information. But they provide a ton of information about what they're finding. And more companies are providing more disclosure about the incidents, the kind of data that's been accessed, that was subject to the unauthorized access, what the implication has meant, and whether they have found additional incidences of unauthorized access. So companies are actually erring on the side of providing even more information in detail. Now I'm talking about 8K filers and companies in general. We also have these SEC specific kind of pending cyber regulations that would also require specifically RIAs to disclose material cyber incidents. Now, what material is? Ask your lawyer, ask your compliance person, but the regulator is never going to tell you what material means. But generally speaking, when you think of material, was there any client harm? Did anyone get access to any sensitive data? Did they download it? Were they able to take it and move it off your systems to somewhere else? Right? Is there any evidence that your data has ended up on the dark web? And there's different companies that are able to kind of scan the dark web. I know it sounds creepy, like, ooh, the dark web. But there are people who do it for you. If you don't want to do it yourself, you may get lost down a really dark rabbit hole. I don't know. But, those are things you want to make sure that you're able to document, if there is an incident. It can even be as simple as a client reaches out and says, hey, someone got into my email and tried to get into my Schwab account, right? It's not even through you. It could be through a client. Even those things you want to document. What did you tell the client? What did the client end up doing? In that incident, please tell them to update their password and reach out to the custodian and get that password updated. But it doesn't even necessarily, the entry point doesn't even necessarily have to be your firm. It can be a client. It can be a third-party vendor that sets up the point of access to your systems. So when you hear about things, when you are put on notice that you have had a potential unauthorized access of your systems and data, you want to immediately leap in and investigate, because these pending rules will actually require you to make certain disclosures within a few days of finding out, and really document kind of what you've done. And then to the extent there has been client data taken, you have to take additional measures. What are you doing to safeguard them, right? Are you implementing credit monitoring? Are you having them all reset passwords, change email addresses? Like what are the steps or measures you're taking? And then what are you doing to fix that vulnerability, right? So the point of entry, how are we fixing that? So these are all things that would need to be documented and then potentially disclosed to the world to see what's going on with your firm. So if that, cues in a lot of shame for you, then now's the time for you to really take these measures and steps to protect your data, put in place the technology and software to safeguard it, implement and heighten, kind of your cybersecurity policies. Hopefully you have cybersecurity policies and procedures where you're talking about the minimum expectations for your team that's accessing your data.
I love the idea of really having to go in, tell on yourself, for lack of a better word, or tattle on yourself. And we're all in the business of working based off of our own public image, if that makes any sense. So I really appreciate you going into depth about that. I'm going to flip over as well to talk a little bit more of either yourself or Tammy. The requirements, you touched on them a few times, but really truly what is required of our RIA partners.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll get started. I know I kind of discussed kind of the breach disclosures. You're going to have to really document and investigate that. You have an incident response plan. So keep in mind, a lot of state regulators are requiring cybersecurity policies and procedures and incident response plans. And that is something that, not officially a rule yet, but strongly suggested under the current kind of SEC guidelines. So you want to have like, what the heck do I do? If I'm an advisor or I'm a client services person and I become aware that my email got hacked, or hey, all of a sudden I can't get into Redtail and it says my password was changed and I didn't change my password. What the hell do I do, right? Like, what am I required to do? So the same way you have a compliance manual or a business continuity plan that tells you if there's an incident, this is what you do. You need to have an incident response plan that says, who do you go to? Who's mandated with performing the investigation? Who's deciding whether or not this needs to be disclosed? Who's deciding whether or not to go out to the clients and disclose what's happened? Right? There's a public side that from a regulatory side, say through like your ADV documents where you may need to disclose a cyber incident. But there's also just letting your clients know, depending on what was accessed, if they need to be aware, hey, there's a possibility your data's been accessed. So this incident response plan really needs to go through what the steps are, who's responsible, what are the criteria for disclosing publicly, right, or disclosing to your clients, and then how do you remediate the issue? And is there any kind of ongoing monitoring that may be required? So do you need to work with your IT company to make sure they're doing more testing or implementing more software, or more regularly reviewing whether there's patches available where you can update those softwares? All these software companies, if you're like, I'm a big Microsoft gal, so they're routinely sending out patches when they identify vulnerabilities in their software. And you want to make sure you are downloading those patches so that you eliminate that potential vulnerability that's been identified from your systems. So that's a huge problem. But I think in general, I will tell you from working with a ton of firms, from state registered to several billion in AUM, and they've got offices everywhere and multiple branches. If they're still functioning off of Excel spreadsheets for their compliance program, 99% of the time, they don't have anything from a cyber perspective. And it's scary. And it's scary because of the sheer amount of sensitive data you hold and keep. So I think it's really important to take this seriously. It's why I talk about with clients about getting cyber insurance, having a robust cybersecurity policy and incident response plan. It's about identifying vendors that can come in, because let's be real, advisors, this is not your zone of genius. You're not a tech person. I think in my entire 15-year career as a securities attorney, I met one person that had genuine technology background that could do this himself as a CCO. So everyone else, you don't have that level of tech experience. You need to rely on experts who can do this for you.
I have a question from the chat, Leila, and Tammy as well. I want to chime in. Is there anywhere that's a good source to check that state law regarding disclosure and notice agreements, either state specific or on a SEC level?
So the SEC, always go to the SEC website. There's press releases. You can find, there's a section on rules and enforcement and compliance. There's a tab on the SEC website. For state registrants, you'll just want to Google, your state securities commission. So I'm in Georgia, so it'd be like the Georgia Securities Division, and it'll send you to a link. And then, depending on the state, I will say some states have better websites than others. Like you're in Louisiana, you're SOL, I'm sorry. But, a lot of states have a lot of information. You can find guidance on these states. Worst comes to worst, if you can't find it, you're unsuccessful, give them a call. See if they can provide you any guidance. They're not going to give you advice, but they can at least point you to the rule or any guidance or any content or material they have that will speak to what the state's requirements are from a cybersecurity perspective.
I just wanted to comment quickly on the incident response plan. I mean, I always tell people that, those are invaluable when you're having a true incident, because you put them together, when your hair's not on fire, and, and then when there is a fire, you've got everything that you need that you put together when you had a cool head, and you really can refer to it, and you will be so glad that you did put that together. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Agreed.
Awesome. So let's talk steps RIAs can take right now. Tammy, if you want to jump in with this, I would appreciate some more tangibles. We're seeing some questions in the chat too.
Yeah, sure. So the cybersecurity risk assessment, right? This is kind of like that homework that nobody really wants to do and they put off, but it's really something that's going to be invaluable if you take the time to do it and really put some thought into it. Work with someone if you need help, but this is really going to show you where the gaps are in your particular environment, right? And no one is going to be the same. And so you really need to assess your own maturity of cybersecurity for your company and go through these risk assessments. And then, it's going to you're going to be able to develop a roadmap. What gaps can I close right away? Which ones make the most sense? And you can probably find some things that you can do right off the bat to really improve your cybersecurity maturity. And then you put together your roadmap on when you're going to complete the rest of the items and make this a continual process, right? It's not a one-time, oh, I did it, I got through it, I don't need to do it for another 6 years. It's really something that you want to be continuously mindful of and pull that out, when you can't sleep and go through that. We talked, I think, a little bit on the incident response plan and how valuable that is to have. I would also add, make sure that you have either a paper copy of it or have it stored somewhere else that you can get to. I've seen clients who have had ransomware incidents and they can't get into any of their files. They can't get into their computer. So make sure that this is not in a place that's only digital. Either have it somewhere else or a written copy somewhere that you can get to. Document your incidents thoroughly, right? I think we talked a few slides back about, I think Claudia, you mentioned reporting on yourself, sometimes that's how, we get these revelations and that's how we learn things, right? So, an incident is a chance to improve, right? You want to apply corrective actions. You want to really go through and say, hey, what didn't work here for me, right? How do I need to, change my strategy? What can we put in place so this doesn't happen again? And also, improve your posture on other areas as well. The vendor oversight, again, I think, people are starting to get into this a little bit more. But, when you're trusting other vendors into your environment, even if it's an IT provider, a phone vendor, even someone that you're partnering with for your client information, right? You want to really kind of do your due diligence on them. Make that a regular checkup, right? Every 6 months to a year, right? Are they following security best practices? Do they have good MFA and other security layers on their product and their access? So you really want to keep oversight of that. You don't want to just bring people in and then, never check up on them. We've talked a little bit already about your staff, training them on compliance. Make sure they understand your written information security plan and your cybersecurity policies. Make sure they know that when they see something, they should say something and report it, right? Let you know. And it's not about punishment or, banishing them to the corner. It's better for someone to say, hey, I clicked on something than to, not say anything for fear of, the dunce cap. Let's make these about learning opportunities and correct it right away, right? Because the longer time goes by and you don't know that something happened, you're missing the reporting period and there's longer time for bad actors to possibly be in the system. And then just to kind of align your IT and compliance functions, right? I feel like these departments can work really well together, and when you understand the needs for each side, it really creates that stronger awareness for both. So keep those meetings regular, touch base, go over the risk assessment and plan how to remediate those gaps. And you will create this wonderful bond between your IT and compliance people.
In a beautiful, perfect world. I love that, Tammy.
Right.
I wanted to pull in a question from the chat as well. In terms of these steps that RIAs can take from a smaller firm or maybe more of a low budget perspective, do you have any recommendations on where to start if you're brand new and not sure where to get into it?
Sure, I'm sure Tammy's got some places that you can start. But I mean, I think in general, if you go to like the SEC website, even FINRA's website, FINRA has a small business resource page. They actually offer templates. And I know, you're like, FINRA, that's broker dealers, but a lot of the application and requirements are very similar from like an AML perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective. So they actually have free templates and resources there. You can engage with your local technology, IT companies that you may be using to set up your computer. Usually a lot of times they'll have, template cyber policies or incident response plan templates that you can utilize as part of the service. I think the one thing too, because I see the question in the Q&A that I kind of want people to be aware of, is you can find companies that are very economical. You can find technology that is very economical. My firm, for example, our law firm uses Microsoft 365. And we utilize that E5 license. You can actually get that license as a solo or small practice for relatively low cost. And what those enterprise level licenses give you is a lot more opportunity to put in place security settings. It lets you do things like, there was a question about bring your own device. We have bring your own device at our firm, and their device, we set up a separate business profile on it. That business profile is then enrolled into our environment, and that's all done through Microsoft 365. And it's relatively economical for all the benefits you get and all the security options that you have through it. So I think it's also just a matter of spending a little time going through. There's a ton of technology. This isn't 30 years ago where there was like 2 RIAs and like one company doing anything for RIAs. This industry has exploded, and the number of companies servicing this industry has also exploded. So there are a lot more options now, and they all cover the spectrum from very economical to very expensive. So I don't want people to think that there isn't an option, they can't find a provider. But definitely, I still, even as someone that's practicing as a securities attorney, I still go to the SEC's website. I still go to FINRA's website. I pull what I can. Honestly, Google. You can Google stuff. People have documents that they post that you can go retrieve and look at. It's worth a Google, I always say, right? So even just a simple Google cybersecurity incident response plan, RIA, state of Washington, for example. I bet you'll get 1,000 different hits, and you'll be able to put a .pdf in your search, right? Get really good at searching, and you will probably find someone who's posted their incident response plan. So if you're looking for free, that's definitely a way to do it. Go to your regulator websites. There's always resources and guidance there, FAQs. Definitely look there, and then work with your local IT and cyber companies, and they usually come with a lot of resources as well.
Awesome, I appreciate it. And I would add as a Visory 2 cents as well, always feel free to reach out and ask us. Conversations are free by all means, and we're happy to help in the industry as much as we can. Thanks, Brian. Jumping in next, a little bit deeper onto those practical actions for that upcoming changes in compliance.
Sorry, I got distracted. I was gonna get those small firm resources. So I think we kind of have hit on a lot of this, so I'll try not to kind of rehash what we've already talked about. Obviously, from an RA perspective, have it in writing, have it in writing, have it in writing, have it in writing. A lot of firms nowadays are using consultants that are giving you templates, template policy and procedures, template AML policies, template cybersecurity policies, template incident response plans. You need to customize it to fit your business, right? So if the template's talking about Microsoft 365 and you're a Google firm, you need to update it, right? I mean, that's kind of one of the issues we see. That's like a super easy thing to fix, but it's one of the common issues that regulators see when they come in for an audit, is that a lot of firms are using these consultants that are giving you templates, but then you're not bothering to customize it to your business. So make sure you're reviewing those policies and procedures, making sure that as your business grows, as your technology changes, You want to keep a running list of your vendors. You want to keep a running list of all the technology and software you're utilizing, what you're utilizing it for. So you want to regularly update and test and tweak and update and test and tweak and update on an ongoing basis. And then you want to make sure as your business model evolves, if there's anything that sudden happens, that you want to review that as well. We go back to IT providers. Cyber is not my zone of genius. Our firm is an outsourced provider. I know for most advisors, it's definitely not their zone of genius. So stop trying to do it yourself. You're going to spend more time, more resources, and ended up costing you more money. What we cannot create is more time. We all have the same 24 hours every day. Nobody in this world, no matter how wealthy, can go buy more time. So save your time and use it towards what you're good at, and give that work to a professional that can handle your IT. So I think that's super important. And then make sure you're keeping up with regulations. So whether you're a state registered firm or an SEC registered firm, I keep directing everyone to these, SEC website, FINRA website, your state securities commission, because who do you think they're creating content for? Not for themselves. They're creating it for you, because the expectation is that you as advisors, you as compliance people, as cyber people, you're going to the website and you're reviewing what they're telling you is your requirement, right? And I know I hear it like, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have enough time to keep up with it. You have this opportunity in this industry to do so much good and frankly make a ton of money. Sorry, you got to conform to some regulations. You've got access to very sensitive data. You got to take it seriously. So saying I didn't know or I don't have time is not a legitimate excuse, and the auditors will tell you as such, right? And that's how, when you go and hear about all these firms getting fined, that's why, because it's not a good enough excuse. All this content on these regulator websites are for you. So go read it, go use that content to help inform. But yeah, I mean, for a lot of you, it start at the basics. So just document it and then grow and evolve it from there.
Fabulous. Tammy, anything we missed there that you'd add on?
I'm going to touch a little bit on the insurance policies. From my side of the house, I see a lot of these, and we help a lot of our clients in filling them out. And the trend I'm seeing is that the insurance companies are requiring a lot more controls to be put in place, and they're requiring you to sort of self-audit, fill out their forms and say, yes, I have this in place. I'm doing this. I have VPN, I have MFA, I have, endpoint detection response. And so when you fill that out, and send that back to them, not only does that affect your rate, or your renewal status, but if you were to have a claim and bring them in, they're going to pull out your little sheet that you filled out, and they're going to look at your answers, and they're going to go through that, of course, with a fine-tooth comb. So you want to make sure that the things that are on those questionnaires you're doing and you have in place, and they're all, they're for good. They're for a reason, to protect your company and the data. But I'm seeing a lot more of these questionnaires. And, the first couple of years it was, okay, maybe 3 questions. Now it's like, 2 pages of questions and things that you sort of have to attest that you have in place. So, this is no longer a voluntary, kind of thing. It's becoming, this is the way you need to run your business. So, like Leila said, get in, learn more about it, Google some of this stuff if you're not sure, but, and certainly, partner with the right providers who can help you along this journey.
Thank you so much. I know we've been talking a little bit of scariness lately, so let's talk success, right? What is compliance, or what's a success story either of you have seen that has really helped an RIA?
I'll give my scary story first with a happy ending, and then maybe Leila has a more of a compliance focused one. I alluded a little bit to it earlier. So, Visory has a strong MDR, EDR, which is managed detection and response, endpoint detection and response product for our cybersecurity. And we saw this really play out nicely in an environment where ransomware was trying to get in and trying to get onto some specific endpoints. And this product was able to take action, shut down the attempts, block the users, and really just kind of kick them out, right? They were trying to uninstall the product, and they sort of knew what was happening, and they were trying to maintain their persistence and get in. But this particular product made the difference in this company being completely ransomware, or, in this case, there was just some inconvenience. We had to clean up a few things, but it really didn't spread throughout the whole network. So that's more of a sort of a security tool success story. So maybe Lila's got something a little more compliance related.
Thankfully, I will have to knock on some wood. Our firm, we provide legal and compliance services to RIAs. So a lot of times when we're already providing those compliance services, cybersecurity is one of the first things we talk about with our clients. And I pretty much mandate they all go get cyber insurance. Because it kind of goes back to where I started at the beginning of the hour, which was, it's not a matter if, it's a matter of when, right? And no one wants to spend the money on trying to fix a problem that could be potentially huge. So cyber insurance is really important. But thankfully, a lot of our firms, a lot of the issues they've had have come from, the client side. The client's email's been hacked. There's sometimes it's a third-party vendor too. I mean, that I mentioned before, there are a lot of companies in our space now offering services. You need to do your due diligence, because some of these companies have been around for 6 months. They've been around for a year. They may have had their own incidents issues. I kind of joked a little about Target. I mean, Target's a sophisticated company. It's been around. They've been hacked. So I think in terms of the stories I have, they all end happily because they've been generally kind of minor issues. But that's also because as a provider to these firms, that's one of the first things we focus on. When a regulator's telling you we have 5 areas we're focusing on, and cybersecurity constantly is in that top 5, you spend some time on it. It's not something to kind of I'll deal with it later. You are holding on to people's life savings. You are holding information that is someone's legacy, what they leave behind when they leave this earth. You got to take it seriously, right? When they're giving you socials and date of births and beneficiary information and account numbers, you got to take that stuff seriously. So unfortunately, nothing scary for me on cybersecurity. But a lot of things we do see are kind of, it's usually unsophisticated. Someone had an old password. Someone didn't lock their phone. Someone left a device at the airport bathroom. And it was accessed. It's really easy stuff generally that causes problem. Your biggest liability is your team. It's your staff, right? Especially when we're talking about remote work, working from home. How do you know who's got access to their home computer? How do you know if they're locking the computer? How do you know what information their kid or their spouse or someone else that lives in their home has access to? These are questions you've got to know. And so that way you can kind of work swiftly to mitigate any of those risks. So lots of things to think about.
One thing that really brought up is in the previous slides we talked about as well, that portion of training your team. I've seen prospects personally that one employee accidentally clicks on one bad link that can then, jeopardize the entire firm. Excuse me. I mean, in that vein as well, I think it's hyper important that you're as strong as your weakest employee, for lack of a better word, and making sure that while we have a bunch of fabulous people tuning in now, this knowledge is also passed down to the people in and out of your system every day too.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we have a tendency to focus on the big, huge things that can happen. And oftentimes it's the little things, it's as simple as, hey, yeah, that looks like your coworker sent it. But if you expand the email and look at the email address it came, you know, the domain is like at scam.com or something. You know what I mean? It's like, it's as long as, and that's where these compliance meetings are important. That's why, you know, the SEC requires annual compliance reviews. Those annual compliance reviews involve your cybersecurity policies and procedures. And while most states don't require annual reviews, it's not a bad idea to do annual reviews. And
Awesome.
training. Lots of training.
I want to jump into then your compliance university, Leila, that you guys are doing over at my RIA lawyer, and give you a second to chat about that as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I'm super excited about Compliance University. We've been doing some iteration of Compliance University for almost the last 6 or 7 years. And this latest version is our most robust version ever. So Compliance University is an opportunity for folks who are begrudgingly, perhaps, responsible for compliance or performing compliance tasks and responsibilities to actually learn the who, what, when, where, why behind what the hell I'm doing, right? Like, why the heck do I do email review? You can come join us at Compliance University. Every month is a different topic. We have a 12-month foundational course where we really go over high level all the different rules and regulations. I think that was one of the questions in the Q&A. What the hell are the rules that I'm subject to? What are specific laws? We talk about those. And the cool thing about our Compliance University is, you know, every month we go through a different topic, but our training is separated into 4 weeks. So week 1 of every month, you're getting a recorded training. Week 2, you're getting homework. Homework is a practical implementation of what you're learning. So our cybersecurity month, for example, you get a template incident response plan to go and customize. Week 3 is usually a deeper dive learning and Q&A. It's live. And it's usually live with myself or one of the other attorneys from our team. You're there with other people, so it's great to collaborate. And then week 4, you submit your homework. So you actually have a lawyer review your homework and offer feedback so that you can go and finalize that homework and implement it in your firm. And we do that for the 12-month foundational course. And then after that, you can enroll in other modules where they start taking deeper dives into these various topics. And we're actually going to be launching some mini modules where we'll teach you practical skills. How the hell do I file a U4? How the hell do I complete this incident response plan, right? What do I do? So not just learning the theory and the rules, but how to actually perform and document. So super excited. And our next class is enrolling beginning of April. So if that's something you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you so much. Everybody get your phones out. I'm going to put up Leila's information here. If you have questions regarding Compliance University or anything my RIA lawyer related, go ahead and screenshot for me now. 3, 2, okay. I'll also pull up my contact information. Again, my name is Claudia. I'm on the sales side of Visory. Really quickly, I would like to say, if you guys have that bug or that nugget of fear in your gut about all of these compliance rules coming out, or about any of these, honestly, IT-related issues surrounding your firm, I would really encourage you to reach out to myself. I'm happy to review things in depth with you guys. We're really excited to be front runners in this industry, as we are an RIA specific managed service provider. So this is what we do. You guys are who we talk to day in and day out. And we're happy to set up some time. Again, get your phone out, take a quick screenshot, and I'm going to open it up to the floor. Any questions? Feel free to throw them in the chat or anything Leila or Tammy see that they want to jump into.
So I see an AML question. It is a lot of questions in case you're asking. Not too many, it's just a lot in one little paragraph. But so yeah, I mean, there's some AML rule. So the AML rule that this anonymous attendee is asking about is the new anti-money laundering rule that will be applying, that is applying to RAs, and that you'll be required to operationalize by January 1 of 2026. So you'll be required to file what are called SARs, or suspicious activity reports. If those of you have any experience on the BD side, this will probably sound more familiar, but you'll actually be required to file notifications to regulators about any kind of suspicious activity. And that could be, it's an AML money laundering program, so generally related to that. But in terms of clients, especially senior exploitation, keep in mind some states have state-specific requirements when it comes to notifying the appropriate adult protective services agency in that state about any potential senior exploitation. Custodians have processes if you alert them about potential senior exploitation. And most times, your firm's policies and procedures will also have information about senior adults and vulnerable adults and certain red flags that you need to keep in mind. So it's not just a potential AML issue, because someone taking advantage of an elder person, for example, it may not be money laundering, right? It may not be triggered under the AML rule, but it could be triggered under like the Senior Safe Act or a similar state law. So I think when we're talking about senior exploitation in more specifically, it can overlap with AML, but normally it doesn't, because it's not usually money laundering that's coming up. It's someone just taking advantage and taking money. There's definitely red flags, but you want to know what state and federal requirements you're subject to. So again, Senior Safe Act, for those of you who wanted the specific law, take a look at that. And then not every state, but a lot of states have specific laws as well, where you would be required to notify adult protective services and potentially also be required to notify the police.
Great question. Thank you. I wanted to actually give Tammy the mic as well. I think we're going to wrap up here, guys. Any final word or any final thoughts on what you're seeing as a Visory head honcho, if you will, or anything you're seeing regularly?
We see a lot. And I think, that's what makes it unique for us to, be in this market, right? We can see what happens to one firm and be able to sort of help everyone else with that information. But I would go back to something I think we've all talked about a few times during this hour, is that really it's some of the very common, very simplistic things that, that get you into trouble, right? Just losing a device, or, not changing a password in, 10 years, right? It's some of the little simple things. I think a lot of times people think they have to do, this really big, complicated thing. But it's the little things. Pay attention to the small things. Because those are still working, right? Those are, like I mentioned with the phishing emails, they still use them because they still work. So I think, just as a wrap up, start where you are. You don't have to have everything done overnight, but make some progress, right? And now that you're held accountable, and you need to do this stuff. Just jump in. It'll be great. It'll be okay.
Awesome. Well, ladies, thank you so much. Thank you everyone who's attended. We're going to end about 3 minutes, or I guess 2 minutes now early. Really appreciate your time today. I know I learned a lot. I'll say again, if anyone has follow-up questions, you can reach out to myself or Leila. We're happy to be of service to you. So thank you all. Have a fabulous Wednesday, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you.